Knoxville, Tennessee got a moment to shine in the spotlight when Hollywood hotshot Robert Mitchum produced Thunder Road in 1958. Although the movie was shot 100 miles east in Asheville, North Carolina, the opening theme brought attention to Knoxville's Kingston Pike, a segment of the infamous Thunder Road. The Moonshine route's name refers to the roar of engine escaping the grasp of authorities. Thunder Road runs from Harlan, Kentucky to Knoxville, Tennessee, and legend has it that the movie's climax, when moonshine runner Lucas Drulin crashes his Ford coupe during an epic police chase, is based on a real Kingston crash. While many Knoxvillians recount the tragedy, there's not much consensus on the details. People have grown up believing what someone told them when they were young, Knoxville local Alex Gabbard told Knoxville News Sentinel in 2012. For years, he tried to get to the bottom of the Thunder Road origin story, but like many others, ultimately failed to identify it. No newspaper stories, no records, no nothing. Mitchum died without revealing his inspiration. It's history, claimed Gabbard. To those of us who grew up in that world, it doesn't seem like history because it doesn't seem so long ago, but it is. Now it's giving way into legend. In the decades following its premiere, cult classic Thunder Road held the United States in a tight grip. It took over movie drive-ins, themed roller coasters at Dollywood, and even inspired a young Bruce Springsteen to write a song of the same name. But what intrigued East Tennesseans was not just their shout-out in the theme song. Thunder Road told an all-too-familiar story of mountain people evading or attempting to evade authorities in order to maintain self-reliance. Moonshine is the name for untaxed and therefore illegal liquor. It's sometimes called White Lightning or Mountain Dew. Nowadays, the label is seemingly flexible. Check the shelves of any liquor store and you might see clear whiskeys or neutral spirits labeled as moonshine, but don't be fooled. This is just a regular licensed commercial spirit being advertised with a folkloric name. The practice of illicit liquor making has deep roots in the Appalachian region. When Scots-Irish settlers first arrived in the mountains in the 1700s, they brought their whiskey-making skills. Small farmers with vast corn harvests found a profitable drink to concoct. They didn't call it moonshine then. The word's British origin refers to the tradition of sneakily concocting liquor in the nighttime, so it wasn't until distillers had reason to brew in secret that they used the infamous name. Appalachian farmers further north in western Pennsylvania launched a rebellion in 1791 when the federal government imposed an excise tax on whiskey. They, quote, clung to whiskey as the stronghold of their households, writes historian Stephen Stoll. They opposed the tax because it devalued their drink that previously functioned as an irreplaceable source of stability. Although the uprising mostly failed, a strong desire to independently control food commodities was established among mountain farmers. Moonshine, real moonshine, is not legal. The home distillation of liquor is more complicated than wine or beer making because of the greater loss in tax revenue. Placing a tax on whiskey burdened Appalachian distillers by increasing the price for consumers and therefore lessening the demand. Maybe this price increase wouldn't have been a problem, but money was not plentiful in the southern mountain economy at the end of the 18th century. Most families provided for themselves using forest resources, no need to interact with outside economies. Banks were distant, and the region mainly operated under a barter system. Landowners were already being taxed on their land and livestock. They recoiled at this unprecedented excise on one of the few goods that can earn them cash. This lack of cash flow did not cease to be a problem in the region. Outsiders continued to interfere with Appalachian life during the 1800s and 1900s, increasingly placing locals in a state of dependency, whether with their landlord, the lumber or coal companies that they worked for, or the taxes that they loathed. And the taxes weren't the only problem. Temperance laws spread throughout the region like wildfire, eventually resulting in nationwide prohibition from 1920 to 1933. With this new crackdown on liquor, demand for moonshine hit an all-time high. Secret stills popped up every which way. With alcohol cheap and always available, homemade creation and consumption rose dramatically. Participants in this illicit economy developed creative methods of hiding and transporting their merchandise. The New York Herald wrote in 1922 about Cumberland Mountain, Tennessee local George Neff, a notoriously crafty transporter or bootlegger. "Nary a drap of liquor in this here car," George told the cops, who apparently pulled him over 5 times in 1 week. Later to his friends, "Well, I didn't lie to him. The stuff wasn't in the car, it was under it." When the officers asked him about the 40-gallon jug suspended under his small car, he claimed it was one of them newfangled gas tanks, and George carried on his way. The federal and local police struggled to contain the moonshine problem. Not only did mountain ingenuity stump them, but the geography of the region interfered too. "Mountains are as scattered as the hills are scattered," one officer told the Herald. "The moonshiner's game is a lone one." But in reality, this usually wasn't the case. Distilling families, households, and neighbors, although sometimes in competition with one another, often formed organized resistance, working together to outwit their pursuers. This is not to say that moonshining communities were incredibly inclusive. In 1890s, the White Cap Club emerged in Wilkes County, Tennessee. This gang of moonshiners sought to protect each other from federal agents, quote, convinced that federal and local liquor laws threatened to destroy their livelihood. Loosely based on the organizational structure of the Ku Klux Klan, the Whitecaps also terrorized local Black Appalachians in an attempt to maintain white supremacy. Black Appalachians did participate in moonshining, though, and had for a long time. Perhaps the most infamous moonshiner of Hancock County, Tennessee, Mahalia Big Haley Mullins, was a mixed-race woman known for her lawlessness and enormous size. In 1899, the Philadelphia Inquirer published a story on one of the many unsuccessful arrests of Mahalia. When deputies found the felon in her Cumberland cabin, their seizure was interrupted by her young daughter, who whispered in her mother's ear, "I'll go tell the crowd," referring to Mahalia's other dozen children. Knowing they would be outnumbered, the officers withdrew. When Mahalia died in 1898, newspapers across the country gave nod to her legendary status. Not too big for death, reported the Asheville Citizen-Times, claiming Mahalia was a 650-pound mother of 18 who could not be captured by the police on account of her size and the isolated location of her home. Bridgeton Pioneer wrote that there was, quote, no way to get her down the mountain. Cheers to Big Haley. The story was clearly sensationalized, with many reporters even speculating that she had been murdered by her neighbors, envious of her successful moonshine business, which she took over after her husband died. Was this great woman murdered? Asked the Inquirer. If so, the reporter predicted that the mountains would witness bloodshed, as the tribe always avenges an injury to one of its members. This use of tribe perpetuates an anti-Appalachian and frankly anti-Black narrative that paints the family as primitive and backward. Stereotypes synonymous with Appalachia, like the rugged mountaineer or isolated hillbilly, are evident in moonshine discourse. According to the Encyclopedia of Appalachia, the hillbilly image is a lanky, black-bearded white male who lives in the cabin in the mountains with an outhouse out back. He wears a battered slouch hat, totes a shotgun and a jug of moonshine, and holds little regard for the law, work, cleanliness, or book learning. The fountain drink Mountain Dew drew from this mold for advertising campaigns for years. Drink Mountain Dew, they said. It'll tickle your innards. Mascot Willie the Hillbilly was always depicted with his trusty jug and tattered plaid ensemble. Willie served as comic relief, and he never wore shoes. Despite the hyperbolized tales surrounding moonshine, its role as a regional commodity cannot be reduced to the story of drunken mountain folk running from the law. Moonshining represents resistance and rejection of laws not suited to meet the needs of the mountains. This idea garnered particular relevance after Prohibition, as concerned Appalachians and Americans at large questioned the stability of their civil liberties. As foreign entrepreneurs crept into the forest and mountain landscapes to make money off of the abundance of natural resources, the people of Appalachia did what they could to hold on to their subsistence. Even flying down Thunder Road, the moonshiners' game was a serious one.